The cameras flashed like lightning. The music thumped through the marble walls. The crowd shimmered under the gold spotlights. And right in the middle of all that glamorous chaos, something happened that no one expected. Not the fans, not the press, and definitely not Meghan herself. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. A moment so quick you could blink and miss it. A moment that would be replayed online thousands of times before sunrise. A moment people would whisper about for days like some forbidden Hollywood rumor. Why did Michael B. Jordan, Hollywood's golden favorite, the man of the night, the honoree at the American Cinematheque Awards 2025, refuse a simple photo? And why did that refusal feel like a thunderbolt aimed directly at Meghan Markle? Here's the real question. What happened between the flash of a camera and the flick of his hand that left Meghan stunned, embarrassed, and fighting back tears? Let's start at that exact instant. Picture it, the red carpet glowing under warm amber light, the crisp clatter of heels, the murmured voices of stylists adjusting gowns, journalists whispering to assistants, 1,000 tiny dramas stacked on top of each other. Meghan spots Michael across the walkway. He is surrounded by staff, cameras, and that unmistakable aura that comes with being the honoree. She adjusts her posture, smooths her dress, takes a deep breath. The kind you take before stepping into a moment you think will be flattering, triumphant, maybe even healing. But then something goes wrong. You know those moments when you expect one reaction and get the exact opposite? Those moments that flip the energy in the room? That was this moment. Meghan takes a step toward the photo zone. A photographer, sensing a star-pairing opportunity, instinctively adjusts his lens. A red carpet coordinator glances over, confused. And Michael, with the tiniest, almost parenthetical gesture, does something no one ever imagined he'd do. He lifts his hand, just slightly, barely a movement. But anyone who works in Hollywood red carpet management knows exactly what that gesture means. Not now, not planned, not approved. A soft refusal. And just like that, the imaginary snapshot that Meghan believed would circulate across social media, winning back a little sparkle, evaporated. Vanished. Never happened. She freezes. Only for a second. But a second on the red carpet feels like eternity. Now pause for a moment. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a room full of people and suddenly felt like the whole world was staring at you, even though no one was actually looking? That's what her face said. But here's where things get interesting. Because this story isn't about a photo. It isn't even about Michael B. Jordan himself. It's about timing, politics, Hollywood strategies, reputation, clashing narratives, pressure, and two very different career trajectories crossing paths in a way neither side planned. And that's why the American Cinematheque Awards 2025 became the stage for one of the most unexpected, awkward, and emotionally charged moments of the entire award season. But let's rewind just a little, not back to the refusal, not even to the red carpet. Before we talk about why that gesture mattered so much, we need to understand what Meghan wanted that night, what Michael represented, and why their worlds intersected in the most inconvenient way imaginable. Because the truth is, again, in our fictionalized world, Meghan didn't just show up hoping for a flattering photo. She showed up hoping for a shift, a reset, a change in perception. Something that would signal to Hollywood that she was ready to re-enter a world she once walked through with ease. But Hollywood had changed. Or maybe Meghan had changed. Or maybe both. Let's be honest. Hollywood loves a comeback story. They love drama. They love chaos. They love survival arcs and reinventions. But they also have invisible lines. Lines about brand maintenance, narrative control, and managing reputations with almost military precision. And Michael B. Jordan? He didn't get to the top by accident. He didn't get there by gossip, theatrics, or spectacle. He got there by discipline, image discipline, career discipline, reputation discipline. Which means his team is extremely cautious about any unplanned red carpet moments. So when Meghan stepped forward, hopeful, open, smiling, and Michael's team sent their subtle, not now signal, it wasn't personal. But the emotional impact? That was very personal. Because imagine preparing for weeks. Choosing the dress, studying the guest list, planning your re-entry moment, crafting your strategy, walking in believing, maybe for the first time in a while, that things could go right. Only for all of it to flip in front of dozens of cameras. And yet, here's the twist no one talks about. The real drama didn't happen on the red carpet. The real drama happened backstage. In the green room. In quiet hallways. In whispered conversations. In little looks exchanged between PR teams. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at what was happening inside Meghan's world long before she stepped onto the carpet. Because if you ask her team, again, in this fictional narrative, the night didn't start with glamour. It started with strategy. 2 days before the event, Meghan and her advisors sat in a quiet suite in Beverly Hills. Notes scattered across the table. Outfits lined up. Coffee cups everywhere. The energy tense but hopeful. They reviewed plans for positioning, angles, and safe interactions. There was one name all of them highlighted on the guest list. Michael B. Jordan. Why? Because Michael represents stability, credibility, a narrative that feels upward, clean, and inspiring. A person no one ever accuses of petty drama. Pairing Meghan with someone like him, even in a simple photo, would create the impression of alignment with success and positivity. At least, that's how the PR theory goes. But here's something no one in that room discussed. Michael doesn't do unplanned red carpet photos. He never has. And if they'd checked deeper, they would have known. So how did a meticulously planned strategy collide with a firmly enforced boundary? It's simple. The moment Meghan stepped forward, she stepped into a protocol she didn't know existed. But before you assume this is a story about humiliation, slow down. This night wasn't a single downward moment. It was a sequence. A domino effect. A chain reaction where each tiny interaction affected the next. And the red carpet was only the first spark. Because once that moment happened, something else started spreading. A whisper. A murmur passed from staffer to staffer. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cruel. But enough to change the tone of the night for Meghan entirely. And that whisper? That's what we're building toward. Because everything that came afterward. The awkward glances, the subtle distance from other celebrities, the backstage tension, all of it links back to a single offhand comment someone overheard. A comment that had nothing to do with Michael. Nothing to do with Meghan. But everything to do with Hollywood's unwritten rules. But again, we're not there yet. Before the whisper. Before the tears. Before the rumor. Before the misunderstanding that lit everything on fire. There was Meghan's genuine hope. And that hope is what makes this story sting, even in this fictionalized version. Because whether or not you like her, whether or not you agree with her choices, everyone knows what it feels like to walk into a room wanting redemption. Which brings us back to the start. The carpet, the crowd, the flash, the refusal, and the look on Meghan's face. A mixture of confusion and disbelief. But here's what I need you to know before we go further. That moment was not the climax. It wasn't even the midpoint. It was the beginning. Because what came next is the part no one saw coming. And this is where the night truly begins. But before we jump deeper into the emotional fallout, let's slow down and step inside Meghan's mind at that exact second. Because moments like these don't hit all at once. They arrive in pieces, like fragments of a broken mirror falling one by one, each shard reflecting something painful. In the first second, she probably told herself it was fine, that Michael just hadn't seen her, that maybe he was distracted, that the timing wasn't right. In the second, the self-doubt creeps in. Was her approach off? Should she have waited? Should her team have coordinated better? By the third second, the reality sinks in. He did see her. He made a choice. And everyone around them noticed. That's the thing about high-profile events. People notice everything. A slight turn of the head. A micro-expression. A delay in a handshake. A step backward instead of forward. Even the smallest shift can feel like a tidal wave. The photographers felt it. Their lenses lowered. The handlers felt it. Their eyes darted away. The stylists felt it. Their whispers quieted. The onlookers felt it. Their posture tightened. Moments like these don't echo. They explode silently. Now imagine walking forward after that. Holding your expression together while your emotions are falling apart. Pretending nothing happened while everything inside you is screaming that something definitely did. That is where Meghan was standing, physically and emotionally. But here's where the drama deepens. Because Meghan wasn't alone in that moment. Her publicist saw it. Her assistant saw it. Her stylist saw it. And their reactions fueled something bigger than the refusal itself. Whispers between staffers. Quick glances exchanged between PR teams. A text sent from one coordinator to another. murmurs that Meghan could feel but not decipher. And the more she noticed those subtle reactions, the more her chest tightened, the more her smile strained, the more her mind raced. You know that feeling when you sense people are talking about you, even if you can't hear the words? That sixth sense that something shifted in the room? That's what she was facing. And yet, she still tried to push forward. You have to give her that. Even when the energy shifted, she kept walking, posing, adjusting her posture, pushing through the discomfort like a performer who refuses to let the audience see the slip. But somewhere inside, something cracked a little. Still, none of that was the real story of the night. Not the red carpet, not the refusal, not even the awkward silence that followed. The real story begins once Meghan moves off the carpet and into the building. Because inside those walls, away from the cameras, the energy changes completely. Out there, everything is polished. In here, everything is exposed. Let's step inside. The air feels different, quieter, cooler, heavier with expectation. People huddle in clusters, talking in hushed but excited tones. Assistants move like shadows, adjusting schedules and touching up hair and calming nervous talent. Michael's presence is everywhere. Posters, banners, speeches lining up on cue cards. This is his night. Every room is tuned to him. And that makes Meghan's presence all the more delicate. Because she came hoping for alignment, and instead walked into a space where her presence felt like a misplaced puzzle piece. But let me make something clear. None of this is because anyone is cruel or unwelcoming in this fictionalized event. It's because Hollywood is a game of narratives. Everyone is trying to protect one. Michael's team, Meghan's team, the event organizers, the networks attending, the sponsors. Every move, every photo, every handshake is part of a broader strategy, which means a single misaligned moment has ripple effects. One of those ripple effects hits Meghan the moment she steps backstage. A staffer, rushed, distracted, says something under their breath to another staffer. Just one line. 2 seconds. Barely audible. But it changes everything. The line? We're getting closer to revealing it, but not yet. Because before that whisper spreads, Meghan tries to recover emotionally. She heads to a quieter nook near the green room. She adjusts her dress in the mirror, pretending to fix something that doesn't need fixing. Her assistant stands nearby, giving her space but clearly worried. Her publicist scrolls their phone anxiously, checking early photos from the carpet. A part of Meghan hopes the cameras missed the moment. That maybe the angles were tight. That maybe the gesture wasn't visible. That maybe the narrative could still be controlled. But in Hollywood, narratives slip faster than silk gloves. Because while Meghan is trying to steady herself, fans outside the venue begin uploading the first wave of short video clips. Not dramatic ones. Not confrontational ones. Just snippets of the night. And one of those clips shows Meghan and Michael on the carpet. Not together, but in the same frame. A tiny moment, zoomed in and slowed down by fans who notice everything. Is the gesture obvious? No. Was it intentional? No one can say. But the internet loves connecting dots, even when the lines are imaginary. Still, none of this has reached Meghan yet. Inside the venue, she only feels the shifting atmosphere, the tension, the whispers, the glances. And right then, one of her team members walks up with a nervous expression. They don't say anything at first. Just hold their phone, hesitating. She senses it. Her heart probably drops. Was something posted? Was a rumor spreading? Was the moment caught on camera? But the team member shakes their head, almost reassuring her. That's not the issue. The issue is the whisper. The comment that's beginning to circulate backstage. A comment that wasn't meant to reach Meghan. A comment that explains why Michael didn't want an unplanned photo. And here's where our story starts to deepen. Because the comment wasn't rude. It wasn't gossipy. It wasn't even about Meghan. It was about Hollywood rules. Rules Meghan's team didn't know about. Rules Michael's team always follows. Rules that photographers and handlers treat like gospel. Rules that get broken only once, usually by accident. Before we reveal the line that changed everything, we need to understand something crucial about this world. Hollywood operates like a machine. Every award show, every red carpet, every backstage moment is powered by invisible mechanics. People on the outside see glamour, diamonds, champagne, glimmering smiles. People on the inside see chess. And on this night, Meghan walked into a chessboard already set, with pieces already in motion, and took a step that disrupted the flow. Not because she intended to, not because she wanted drama, but because she didn't know the rule. And the rule is simple, but devastating when broken at the wrong moment. In our fictional world, Meghan stands there, unaware that she crossed a line she didn't even know existed, unaware that people noticed, unaware that the whisper has begun to spread, unaware that the worst part of the night is still ahead. Because what happened next is what truly left her shaken. Not the refusal, not the cameras, not the reactions, something far more personal, something only a few people saw, something no one expected. And this moment, the one we're about to explore next, is the emotional core of the entire night. Because up to now, this is just setup, just tension, just build. The real story begins after the whisper. And the moment that whisper reaches Meghan, everything changes. The strange thing about glamorous nights is that they never begin glamorous. They begin with nerves. Not the delicate kind, the heavy kind, the kind that sits in the chest like a weight and tightens with every passing minute. And on this particular night, the night of the American Cinematheque Awards 2025, Hollywood felt different. Charged, electric, almost alive. You could feel it the moment you stepped out of the car, the heat from the spotlights bouncing off the pavement, the soft roar of the crowd behind the barricades, the overlapping voices of photographers calling out names like a chorus chanting for attention. There's a rhythm to award nights, an unspoken choreography. People arrive in waves. Publicists move like chess pieces. Assistants hover with emergency kits. Stylists adjust gowns with the obsession of surgeons. And in the middle of all this, there was one truth everyone felt, even if they couldn't explain it. Something big was going to happen. No one knew what. No one knew who. But the energy in the air said it clearly. Expect sparks. And it all began quietly, hours before the world noticed anything. Let's step into that moment. Before the lights, before the refusal, before the whisper. Let's step into the anticipation. Because anticipation has a strange way of revealing what people are truly afraid of. For Meghan, in this fictional story, it wasn't fear of the press or the fans or the cameras. It was fear of being ignored. Not hated, not criticized. Ignored. There's something far more painful about silence than scandal. Scandal makes noise. Silence makes nothing. Silence is what Meghan had been fighting for months. Or rather, fighting against. Which is why this night mattered so much. She wanted noise again. Not chaos. Just presence. And Michael B. Jordan? He was the opposite kind of noise. The kind Hollywood respects. Steady. Strong. Earned. So when Meghan stepped onto the carpet, it wasn't just another event. It was her moment to breathe again. But she didn't know the air would change the second she took that breath. Part 2. Let's zoom out for a second. The Cinematheque Awards aren't like the Oscars or the Golden Globes. They're more intimate, more serious, more industry-focused. This isn't a night for gossip. It's a night for legacy. Michael B. Jordan being honored meant something. It said Hollywood trusted him, believed in him, invested in him. Everyone was here for him. The press, the studios, the agents, the directors. This was his night. And Meghan walking into that environment was like walking onto a stage mid-performance. Not wrong, just risky. But Meghan didn't see the risk. She saw opportunity, and she came prepared. Her dress? Chosen to signal elegance, but not extravagance. Her expression? Composed yet open. Her publicist? Already mapping the positions of the photographers. Everything orchestrated. Everything intentional. But even the most perfect plan can crack. And crack it did. Long before the carpet moment that made headlines. Because backstage, hours earlier, a quiet tension was already forming. It began when a staff coordinator scribbled a note onto a clipboard and circled Michael's name 3 times. Then added one more circle. Then underlined it. Why? Because every move involving him that night had to be precise. No surprises. No last-second pairings. No unexpected interactions. Especially not on the carpet. Michael's team had made this clear. Politely. Professionally. But firmly. And that is where the seeds of the later misunderstanding were planted. But Meghan wasn't aware of this. How could she be? Her team assumed A-listers operated the way they used to years ago, with looser boundaries and flexible camera moments. But Hollywood had changed. And Meghan was walking into a version of it she didn't fully recognize anymore. Part 3. As her SUV pulled up to the drop-off point, Meghan glanced out the window at the crowd. There's something surreal about hearing people cheer, but not knowing if they're cheering for you. Some called her name. Some didn't. Some weren't sure. But noise is noise, and for someone craving presence, even uncertainty feels like fuel. She stepped out, letting the flash of cameras wash over her, letting the ambient applause settle around her like a warm blanket. She walked slowly, deliberately, one step at a time. Then something caught her attention. A shift in the crowd's energy. A sharp rise in cheers. A louder cluster of voices. A sudden surge of photographers scrambling for position. Michael had arrived. His presence changed the room without him even walking inside yet. Publicists straightened. Stylists froze. Security tightened. Even the air felt like it inhaled. And Meghan noticed. Her eyes flicked in his direction, just for a moment, but it was enough. This wasn't jealousy. Not admiration. Not longing. It was awareness. Michael represented everything she desperately needed. Stability, respect, and acceptance. Not personally, symbolically. A photo with him would communicate to Hollywood that she wasn't controversial, divisive, or unpredictable. Just present. Just part of the landscape again. Just someone worth including. Part 4. And so, with that quiet hope tucked behind her calm expression, she continued walking the carpet. Her poses were clean, simple, understated. A nod here, a turn there, a delicate smile at the right moment. But the photographers weren't calling her name as loudly as they once did. Some called intermittently. Some didn't. Some didn't recognize her positioning. She wasn't the main attraction tonight. She knew that. But she wanted to be part of the constellation. And then it happened. Michael stepped onto the carpet. The energy shifted completely. You could feel it. Not metaphorically. Physically. The temperature felt warmer. The cheers felt louder. The photographers' voices sharpened like laser beams slicing through the chaos. This is what a Hollywood favorite looks like. This is what momentum feels like. Meghan glanced his way again. Not long enough for anyone to notice, but long enough for the hope to return. And in that moment, her publicist whispered, "He's heading toward the photo zone." That was all she needed. She took a breath. A hopeful one. A steady one. Maybe this could be her moment. Part 5. But the carpet is a battlefield of timing. And timing was not on her side. Right as she took a step toward the photo zone, a handler in a dark suit caught Michael's attention and subtly motioned him to stay on the marked path. Another handler glanced toward Meghan, then toward the emerging crowd of photographers, then shook their head, barely. It was such a tiny gesture most people missed it. Meghan didn't. She slowed, hesitated, tilted her head slightly. Was she misreading? Was she imagining the signal? And then came the moment. Michael lifted his hand, barely. A small movement, a subtle gesture, a signal for his handler, but interpreted differently by the people around them. Not now. Not unplanned. Not approved. Meghan froze. Just for a fraction. But in that fraction, the world seemed to pause with her. Part 6. What did that moment mean? Everything and nothing. It wasn't rude. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't personal. But in Hollywood, it's not the intention that matters. It's the interpretation. Photographers lowered their lenses. A stylist stepped aside. A coordinator turned away. A few bystanders exchanged glances. And Meghan? She did what anyone would do in that moment. She smiled. A soft, surprising smile. The kind you use when you're trying not to show hurt. She kept walking. Kept posing. Kept breathing. But her eyes said something different. Is that really what just happened? Did I misunderstand? Was that a mistake? Did he ignore me? Was I rejected? She didn't say any of it, but she felt all of it. Part 7. And yet, as painful as it was, the red carpet wasn't the worst moment of her night. Not even close. Because what happened next wasn't visible to cameras. It wasn't recorded. It wasn't photographed. It happened backstage. Quietly. Suddenly. Shockingly. A moment that hit harder than the refusal. A moment that would shape every chapter after this one. Because while Meghan was trying to hold her composure, a whisper began to circulate behind the scenes, a whisper she wasn't supposed to hear. A whisper that explained everything. A whisper that would shatter her emotionally later. And the whisper? It hadn't reached her yet, but it was coming. And when it did, it would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever watched someone prepare for a night they believed would change everything, only to realize later that the universe had other plans? That's where our chapter begins. not at the awards, not on the red carpet, but in the quiet, elegant, glass-walled suite where Meghan had spent the afternoon preparing for what she hoped would be her soft return to Hollywood grace. And here's the thing no one ever sees. Behind every glamorous entrance, there's a room full of stress. Let's step inside that room. Imagine it. Soft beige walls, white orchids on a marble table, a rack of gowns shimmering like liquid metal, the faint scent of hairspray and perfume blending with the aroma of fresh espresso. And right in the center, Meghan. Not the Meghan the cameras know. Not the Meghan the headlines imagine. Just a woman trying to get this moment right. Her hairdresser works quietly behind her. Her stylist crouches beside an open suitcase. Her publicist sits on the sofa, hunched over a laptop, typing furiously. Her assistant moves gently around the room, adjusting details no one will ever actually notice. It looks calm, but the silence is tense, charged, because everyone knows what's at stake. Everyone knows Meghan can't afford another misstep, even a fictional one in our story. Everyone knows perception is everything. And Meghan? She knows that too. More than anyone. Part 2. Let's rewind just a little further. Not to days before. Not to hours before. But to minutes before her glam team arrived. Because that was the moment she allowed herself to hope. Sitting alone on the sofa, scrolling through old photos, Meghan paused on one particular image. Not from her royal life. Not from a controversy. But from the early days of her acting career. A candid shot. Her laughing on set. Simple. Unfiltered. Light. She stared at it longer than she meant to. Have you ever looked at an old picture and wondered when exactly you stopped feeling the way you did back then? That's what this moment was for her. A reminder of the version of herself she missed. Hollywood Meghan. The one who was respected for her work. The one who blended in because she belonged. The one who wasn't the center of storm after storm. For a second, she closed her eyes and let herself believe she could reclaim a piece of that person tonight. Then the door opened. Her glam team arrived. And the moment dissolved. Part 3. The planning began immediately. Her publicist opened a folder filled with printed sheets. Color-coded charts of the night's schedule, the guest list, the carpet layout, the seating arrangement, and the predicted flow of press coverage. Let's break down what her team saw. Michael B. Jordan equals the main star. Directors, producers, and studio heads equals high-value photo ops. Streaming executives equals powerful connections. Actors with rising prestige equals good alignment. Anyone involved in controversies equals avoid. This wasn't random. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't personal. It was strategy. Hollywood strategy. And Meghan, in this fictionalized story, listened closely. Because she wasn't here to cause waves. She wasn't here to demand attention. She wasn't here to overshadow anyone. She was here to re-enter quietly. Softly. Carefully. Intentionally. Her publicist tapped Michael's name twice with a pen. Aligning with him tonight could help reset the narrative, they said. Not because she wanted to befriend him. Not because she wanted to lean on him. Just because proximity matters. Positive proximity shapes perception. That's how Hollywood works. But Meghan didn't fully understand the one detail that would ruin this plan. Michael's team planned the night down to the second. No improvisations. No spontaneous attachments. No unexpected pairings. This wasn't a night where people casually jumped into photos. This was a precisely choreographed event. A machine. And Meghan's team, unaware of those boundaries, scheduled her approach based on outdated assumptions. A mistake that changed everything. Part 4. Now let's look at the emotional side of the room. Meghan sat silently while her hair was pinned, her makeup applied, her gown fitted. But her silence didn't come from fear. It came from hope. A fragile hope shaped by everything she'd endured. Anyone who has ever dealt with public misunderstanding knows the desire to reset the story, even just a little. Tonight felt like a chance for that. The Cinematheque Awards aren't about drama. They're about art, craft, legacy. And that's the environment Meghan wanted to re-enter. Not tabloids. Not gossip blogs. Not speculative whispers. A legitimate space. This night had meaning. And that's what makes what happened later so painful. Not because of the refusal, but because of everything she put into preparing for this moment. Part 5. Her assistant entered the room holding an iPad with the latest updates from social media, the press, and the event organizers. Nothing alarming. Everything seemed normal. Her stylist zipped up her gown and stepped back, smiling with relief. "You look beautiful," they whispered. Meghan smiled softly. "Thank you." Not a glamorous smile. Not a camera-ready smile. A real one. Because in this fictional story, Meghan wasn't trying to create drama tonight. She was trying to avoid it. But as her team finalized details, something subtle but important happened. Her publicist received a text. They glanced down, frowned slightly, and quickly locked their phone. Did Meghan notice? Maybe not. Or maybe she did. The way you notice a flicker in someone's eyes, but convince yourself you imagined it. But that text was important. It came from an assistant producer at the event, reminding all publicists, "Please respect the pre-approved photo pairings for honorees tonight." A standard note. Not personal, not dramatic, but crucial, because Meghan's team didn't realize it applied directly to their plan. But that wasn't the only warning they ignored. Part 6. Another message arrived. This one from a staff member on the carpet. "Michael will not be doing spontaneous photos. Only scheduled ones." Again, not rude, not defensive, just logistical. His team had already confirmed his path, his timing, his pairings, and his stops. In a tight award schedule, that's normal. But Meghan didn't hear this. Only her publicists saw the message, and they misinterpreted it. They assumed it meant Michael wouldn't be stopping for random fans or influencers. They didn't realize it also included other celebrities. So while Meghan believed she could gently step into a photo moment, Michael's team believed all photo moments had already been decided. Not a clash of personalities, a clash of schedules. Not a personal rejection, a procedural one. But Meghan didn't know that. She only knew the version she saw on the carpet. Part 7. As the glam team finished, Meghan took one last look in the mirror. Her reflection looked calm. But deep inside, she felt something else entirely. Not panic, not anxiety, just pressure. Because she wasn't stepping into a night of fun. She was stepping into a night of reinvention. That can be heavier than any gown. She didn't look away from the mirror. She didn't blink. She didn't fidget. She whispered something to herself, quietly, almost inaudibly. "You can do this." Not as a speech, not as a mantra, just a simple reassurance. Then her assistant knocked softly. "It's time." Meghan stood, straightened her posture, adjusted her earrings, took a breath. She walked toward the door, but as she reached for the handle, her publicist stepped forward. "Remember," they said gently, "stay near the photo zone for a few minutes. Michael will pass by that area." Meghan nodded. She didn't know yet that this piece of advice, this one sentence, would lead directly to the painful moment on the carpet. Part 8. But there was one more twist in the room. One more warning sign. One more moment that could have changed everything if anyone had paid closer attention. As Meghan gathered her clutch, her assistant's phone buzzed. Another update from an event coordinator. Reminder, please do not approach honorees for unscheduled photos. Their teams have strict timing. Her assistant skimmed it briefly and assumed it was generic. They never mentioned it. Not to Meghan, not to the publicist, not to anyone. And the window to prevent the later misunderstanding closed completely. This is how things happen, not in explosions, but in missed details. Part 9. Meghan finally stepped out of the suite. Her heels clicked softly on the hallway floor. Her dress flowed behind her like liquid shadow. Her team followed at a careful distance. They moved through the quiet hallway toward the elevator. And the entire time, no one spoke. Not out of tension, out of focus. Meghan believed the night might change everything. Her team believed they had a smart plan. But the universe of Hollywood, even our fictional version, has its own timing. And unfortunately, the timing tonight was all wrong. As the elevator doors opened, Meghan's publicist whispered, "When you see Michael, just smile. It'll look natural." They were right, but not in the way they expected. Because that smile, the one she would offer on the carpet, would be the same smile she used to hide something breaking inside. And now? Now Meghan was just minutes away from the moment that would flip her night upside down. The refusal, the confusion, the silence, the whisper, all of it was waiting at the bottom of that elevator. And once the doors opened, there would be no turning back. Because what happened next would change not just the night, but the entire trajectory of everything that followed. The spotlight wasn't just on Michael B. Jordan tonight. The spotlight belonged to him. The Cinematheque Awards weren't honoring a trend, a moment, or a lucky break. They were honoring a career built on discipline, consistency, loyalty, and relentless craft. And everyone in the building knew it. This wasn't like a movie premiere, where the energy is wild and unpredictable. This wasn't like a Comic-Con panel, where fans shout over each other. This wasn't like a casual industry mixer where people float around clinking glasses. This night was ceremonial, serious, prestigious, almost sacred in the world of film. It was the kind of night where directors sit up straighter, producers speak softer, writers keep mental notes, executives mentally tally who congratulates whom. And right in the center of all that heightened atmosphere stood Michael B. Jordan, the man whose work had earned him this moment, the man whose name alone shifted the energy of the room. But here's the irony you'll soon see. The very thing that made this Michael's night was also what made Meghan's moment impossible. Part 2. Let's step into Michael's world. He arrived hours before the chaos, escorted quietly through a private entrance used only for honorees and high-level executives. No screaming crowds, no frantic photographers, just a calm, focused environment. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. Not flashy, not loud, just clean, strong lines, the exact aesthetic people admire him for. His team walked behind him, speaking softly into earpieces, coordinating his schedule down to the minute. You'd think he was about to step into a major film scene instead of a tribute ceremony. But that's how seriously he and his team took this night. Every step was planned, every moment timed, every photo mapped out ahead of time. There were scheduled poses with the award presenters, scheduled moments with donors and sponsors, scheduled appearances with industry veterans, scheduled group photos with the Cinematheque board. Nothing improvised, nothing accidental. Why? Because Michael wasn't just an actor tonight. He was the brand, the honoree, the centerpiece, and his team was determined to protect that at all costs. Part 3. Inside the venue's private green room, Michael sat in a quiet corner reviewing the program with his publicist. Not a chaotic room, a serene one. Dimmed lights, soft music playing, a few framed photos from his films resting on the table, a bottle of sparkling water at his side. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't jittery. He was grounded, focused, and the people around him felt it. Because Michael wasn't the type to rush around panicking before a big night. He was the type to sit still, breathe, think, and move with intention. His team mirrored that energy. His manager checked the lineup for the 5th time. His PR lead scanned through incoming press requests. A studio executive stepped in to offer congratulations. A longtime director friend dropped by to shake his hand. A quiet exchange, a warm hug, a shared laugh. Everything about this room said, "This is a man Hollywood respects." Part 4. But the key detail, the detail that later collided with Meghan's evening, was Michael's media protocol. Michael had one rule: no unplanned red carpet pairings. Not because he disliked anyone, not because he wanted to avoid certain people, not because he was being cold or selective. Because his team needed to control every image that left the carpet. Not in a controlling way, in a protective way. Michael was honoring years of work tonight. They didn't want random photos overshadowing that message. So his red carpet map looked like a military blueprint. Where he would stop, who he would pose with, which photographers he'd engage with, how long he'd stand in each spot, who would accompany him, who would not. It wasn't personal. It was disciplined. Maybe that's where the collision began, not in emotion, but in logistics. Part 5. While Michael was reviewing his speech in the green room, Meghan was still in her suite preparing for the night. 2 people, 2 rooms, 2 teams, 2 plans. On a collision course neither saw coming. Because while Meghan believed cameras were an open zone, Michael's team saw the carpet as a controlled operation. And while Meghan planned to approach gently and naturally, Michael's team planned for 0 surprises. But what neither knew was this. The carpet staff had been instructed to redirect anyone approaching Michael outside the approved list. That instruction wasn't aimed at Meghan. It was aimed at everyone. Directors, producers, actors, even fellow honorees from past years. Michael wasn't being protected from anyone. He was being protected from chaos. Still, chaos found him anyway. Part 6. Let's zoom deeper into Michael's mindset. When he finally stepped onto the carpet, the crowd roared. Not screamed, roared. A deep, thunderous, rolling sound that only a handful of stars ever provoke. The flashes began immediately. Camera shutters snapped like rapid fire. Michael lifted his hand in a small wave, steady, controlled, gracious. He smiled the kind of smile people trust. Warm, calm, confident. He looked like a man who knew exactly who he was and what he represented. But inside, there was something else too. A quiet, focused determination. Because tonight wasn't about the spectacle. It wasn't about the cameras. It wasn't about the celebrity moments. It was about honoring the work, the years, the climb, all the things he never talked about in interviews, the failures, the sacrifices, the late nights, the doubts. This night was meant to be clean, uncomplicated, a celebration. That was the word everyone kept repeating. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. But anyone who knows Hollywood knows this truth. The nights meant for celebration are often the nights when something unexpected happens. Part 7. As Michael moved through his scheduled stops, his team scanned the crowd. They weren't looking for trouble, just tracking the timing. But that's when a handler saw something they didn't expect. Meghan stepping toward the photo zone. Not aggressively, not boldly, just politely, casually, gracefully. A small step, but a significant one, because the handler knew that step could disrupt their timing. And timing, for them, wasn't just about minutes. It was about narrative. Michael's night needed to stay about Michael. Not because of ego, because of legacy. So the handler did what handlers do. They gave the subtle signal. A whisper gesture. A soft redirect. A tiny shake of the head. Nothing loud. Nothing public. And then Michael, noticing his team's cue, lifted his hand ever so slightly. Not at Meghan. Not toward anyone. Just a signal to his team. Stick to the plan. But plans affect people, even unintentionally. Part 8. This is the part Meghan saw. The only part. Michael's subtle refusal gesture. Which, in truth, wasn't a refusal at all. It was a timing cue. But from her vantage point, it looked personal, painful, pointed, and the carpet froze. At least for Meghan. Michael didn't notice the emotional impact his gesture had caused. Why would he? He was already turning toward the next press banner. He didn't see her expression shift. He didn't see the cameras lower. He didn't feel the energy change behind him. He only saw his team moving him forward. But someone backstage did notice. Someone who later became the source of the whisper that shaped the rest of Meghan's night. But we'll get to that later. Part 9. Back in the green room. After the carpet had passed, Michael sat down again. His team was relieved. Everything had gone smoothly. No delays. No unexpected interactions. No chaos. Just clean execution. Perfect. But while they relaxed, something else was happening outside the green room. A ripple. A misunderstanding. A misinterpretation. A misalignment of two completely different intentions. Someone backstage commented. Michael didn't want to take unscheduled photos tonight. Said casually. Said for clarity. Said without malice. But someone else heard it. And then passed it. And then someone else exaggerated it slightly. And then someone, unintentionally, said Meghan's name in the same sentence. And that sentence? That's what would eventually reach her. Not the true version. Not the intended version. The whispered version. Part 10. This is where the threads connect. Michael's team thought the night was proceeding smoothly. Meghan's team thought the night had taken a strange turn. And somewhere in the middle, a rumor formed. A rumor no one meant to start. A rumor no one meant to spread. A rumor no one meant to reach Meghan. But it would. And when it did, that's when the emotional fallout began. But before we reach that part, there's something else you need to understand. The carpet incident wasn't the moment that truly shook Meghan. It was what she heard afterward. A whisper. A sentence. An interpretation. The kind that spreads through a venue like a breeze. Soft, untraceable, unavoidable. And that whisper? It was heading straight for her. Fast. Because what she would hear backstage next would make the red carpet moment feel small. Insignificant. Almost harmless in comparison. But what came next would change everything. And no one, not even Meghan, saw it coming. The red carpet is not what people think it is. From the outside, it looks effortless. A smooth parade of stars gliding under lights, smiling for cameras, turning left, turning right, waving gently, floating through the chaos like it's nothing. But if you've ever stood close enough to feel the heat of those lights, to hear the clipped commands from photographers, to witness how publicists quietly orchestrate every second, then you know the truth. The red carpet is a battlefield, not a loud one, not a violent one. A silent battlefield made of timing, positioning, and unspoken rules. Tonight was no different. In fact, tonight the battlefield was more intense than usual. Because Michael B. Jordan's presence raised the stakes, and Meghan Markle's entrance tilted the balance. And the shuffle, the unplanned, unexpected, misunderstood shuffle, is what turned a simple moment into a story that would echo long after the awards ended. Part 2. Let's zoom into the exact moment where everything began to shift. Michael had just stepped onto the carpet. Cameras exploded in light. Fans screamed from behind the barricades. The staff tightened their positions like chess pieces falling into formation. And Meghan? She was already on the carpet, positioned elegantly, poised, controlled, waiting for her moment in the rhythm of photographers. Timing is everything on the carpet. Too early, and you block someone important. Too late, and the moment dissolves. Step an inch too far left, and you enter someone else's light. Turn at the wrong time, and you fall out of the camera's lens path. Meghan knew all this. She had done carpets for years. She wasn't a rookie. But tonight the choreography was different. Why? Because tonight, the entire carpet revolved around one man, Michael, and everyone else had to orbit around his path. Part 3. A subtle tension began when Meghan's publicist glanced toward the photo zone and whispered, "Now might be a good time." A harmless statement. A gentle nudge. A simple, strategic suggestion. Meghan nodded slightly, not in desperation, not in eagerness, just in acknowledgement. She took one careful step toward the area where Michael would soon pass. Not rushing, not pushing, not demanding, just stepping. But that one step was enough to trigger a ripple, because while Meghan's team was focused on timing their approach, Michael's team was focused on preventing any unscheduled interaction. And the carpet staff, caught in the middle, saw both movements at the same time. Part 4. This is where the shuffle began, the delicate dance the public never sees. 3 carpet coordinators noticed Meghan's movement simultaneously. Their eyes darted. Their hands twitched. One stepped forward half an inch. Another whispered something into an earpiece. A third stared directly at Michael's handler. In this world, these tiny movements matter. Because to the untrained eye, it looks like nothing. But to insiders, it's a silent alarm. Something unscripted is about to happen. Part 5. The photographers felt it too. They paused their calls. Their voices dropped a pitch. The clicks slowed. Not stopped, just slowed. The carpet has a pulse. And sometimes, that pulse holds its breath. This was the moment. A breath held. A question forming. Would Meghan step into the zone naturally? Would Michael join? Would this create a spontaneous moment the media could run with? If Hollywood were a soap opera, this would be the cliffhanger commercial break. But real life, even fictionalized real life, doesn't follow scripts. It follows instincts. And those instincts collided. Part 6. Let's move into Michael's perspective, because that's where the misunderstanding formed. He was walking with his handler, answering questions, waving, smiling. He wasn't tense. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't avoiding anyone. He was doing what honorees do, following the predetermined path carved out by the event. As he approached the photo zone, his handler saw Meghan stepping into alignment. The handler reacted immediately, efficiently, not out of disdain, but out of responsibility. They quietly signaled Michael to hold position for a second, not to refuse anyone, not to avoid anyone, but to keep his timing intact. Hollywood timing is like a domino effect. If one tile falls in the wrong direction, the entire sequence collapses. His handler raised their hand just slightly, signaling, "Slow down. Hold. Don't move yet." Michael saw the cue, and without thinking twice, he mirrored the gesture. Part 7. But from where Meghan stood, that mirror gesture looked completely different. It didn't look like timing. It didn't look like logistics. It didn't look like standard carpet protocol. It looked like this. Stop. Not now. Not with her. A misinterpretation, deeply understandable, deeply human. Because how could she know what the gesture meant? How could she know it wasn't meant for her? How could she know Michael wasn't even looking in her direction? She only saw one thing. The man of the night lifting his hand in a way that felt like rejection. And rejection is a hard feeling to hide, even when you're pretending it didn't happen. Part 8. But the shuffle didn't end there. Because once Meghan hesitated, even slightly, the carpet staff reacted again. 2 coordinators stepped closer to her lane. One gestured quietly for her to rotate back toward the press wall. Another gave a polite, practiced smile, the kind staff use when redirecting celebrities without making it look obvious. This is a normal part of carpet control. But to Meghan, it only deepened the sting. Because what began as a timing misunderstanding now felt like multiple people steering her away from the moment she thought she was meant to have. Part 9. And this is where the internal battle begins. The battle every person faces in moments of public discomfort. Do you react? Do you pretend nothing happened? Do you smile and keep posing? Do you acknowledge what you felt? Meghan chose the most dignified path available. She smiled. A quiet, composed smile. Not because she was fine, but because she was trained to act like she was fine. Hollywood teaches you that. Royal life teaches you that even more. Smile when it hurts. Smile when you're confused. Smile when the world feels tilted. It's the armor celebrities use when the spotlight becomes too sharp. Part 10. The shuffle continued as Michael moved forward and Meghan shifted slightly away, and the carpet regained its rhythm. Photographers refocused. Publicists regrouped. Handlers reset the flow. The crowd noise rose again. To everyone else, the moment passed unnoticed. But for Meghan, it changed the tone of the entire night. Because she wasn't reacting to the gesture itself, she was reacting to what it represented. A reminder she wasn't expecting. A reality she didn't want to face. A fear she had hoped would fade. And that fear? Being pushed to the outskirts of the industry she once navigated confidently. Part 11. But here's where things turn quietly tragic in our fictional narrative. While Meghan was trying to steady herself emotionally, someone else saw the confusion on her face. Someone who wasn't part of her team. Someone who wasn't part of Michael's team. Someone who shouldn't have paid attention at all. But they did. And they whispered something to the person beside them. A tiny comment. Barely a sentence. Barely a breath. And that whisper, that insignificant sentence, is what started the rumor that would eventually reach Meghan backstage. A whisper that twisted a logistical gesture into something far more personal. A whisper that turned one moment into something it never was. Part 12. If the story ended there, maybe it wouldn't have hurt Meghan so deeply. But it didn't end there. Because after the shuffle came the ripple. And after the ripple came the whisper. And after the whisper came the misunderstanding that lit the entire night on fire. The red carpet shuffle wasn't the disaster. It was just the spark. The disaster would come later. Behind the scenes. Behind closed doors. Behind all the noise and glamour. And the worst part? Meghan didn't see it coming. No one did. Because what happened after she stepped off the carpet was the beginning of the real humiliation. And the moment that would bring tears to her eyes later that night wasn't even her fault. But that part of the story, that's waiting for us in the next chapter. Because what happened next would change everything. And no one, especially Meghan, saw it coming. Sometimes the smallest moment becomes the biggest memory. Not because it was loud. Not because it was dramatic. Not because it was explosive. But because it hurt quietly. And that is exactly what happened in the seconds after Michael B. Jordan made that subtle gesture. A gesture meant only for his handler. A gesture that meant nothing personal. That somehow landed like a punch in the gut for Meghan. This wasn't the kind of drama where people gasp or scream or turn their heads. This was the kind where everything goes still. You know those moments where you're standing in the middle of a crowd, but suddenly it feels like the whole world shrinks into a tiny circle around you? That's what Meghan felt. Not anger. Not outrage. Just a quiet sting. The sting of being seen, but not included. Part 2. Let's slow down that moment. The exact breath after the gesture. Meghan's smile didn't immediately disappear. She held it. She froze it in place like a porcelain mask. Her chin lifted just slightly. Her eyes flickered for half a second. Her breath caught in her throat. A tiny inhale, barely noticeable. Her publicist, who had been watching from the sidelines, stiffened instantly. Their eyes darted toward Meghan, then toward Michael's team, then toward the photographers. A silent panic. Why? Because publicists speak a secret language, a language made of microreactions. They can tell immediately when a moment will land wrong on camera. And this moment? It was the wrong kind. But here's another twist. It wasn't the refusal itself that caused the shift. It was what happened immediately afterward. Because the carpet, usually loud, chaotic, full of overlapping directions, fell into a strange, brief pause. It was as if the photographers collectively hesitated, unsure what they had just witnessed. Part 3. One photographer lowered his camera. Another tilted his head. A third glanced at a colleague with a confused expression. No one said anything. They didn't have to. The energy had changed. The photographers didn't know what the gesture meant. They only saw Meghan step forward and then stop. They watched Michael hold his pause, just long enough for it to feel intentional. And in that split second, a question formed silently among them. Was something happening here? Now, let's be clear, the photographers weren't assuming drama. They weren't assuming rejection. They were simply reading body language, observing, interpreting. And that interpretation created a ripple, the ripple that would soon turn into whispers. Part 4. Meanwhile, Meghan tried to regain control of the moment. She turned her body slightly toward the press wall. She offered a soft smile. She posed, gracefully, confidently, professionally. But even as she posed, her mind wasn't calm. Her thoughts spun. Did I misread that? Did something go wrong? Did I step too early? Should I have waited? Is Michael avoiding me? Do the cameras think I did something embarrassing? The thing about doubt is that it amplifies itself in seconds. And the more Meghan forced her smile, the more the doubt grew. Part 5. Then came the moment that made everything worse. One photographer, maybe trying to help, maybe trying to smooth over the awkwardness, called out, "Meghan, look this way." But the tone wasn't enthusiastic. It wasn't confident. It was hesitant, like a question, like an apology. Meghan turned, grateful for the anchor, but the slight uncertainty in his voice added another layer to her discomfort. Why were they unsure? Why did the call feel softer than usual? Were they also confused about what happened moments earlier? And while she was processing all this, a second photographer murmured, too loudly, to the one next to him. What was that? Did you see that? The words weren't meant for Meghan, but she heard them. Her shoulders tensed, almost imperceptibly. Part 6. Now, from the outside, nothing dramatic was happening. Fans in the distance continued cheering. Assistants scurried with garment bags. Publicists made notes on clipboards. Security guards scanned the crowd. Life moved on. But inside the bubble of the carpet, inside Meghan's emotional space, everything felt sharper. Too sharp. She felt like she could hear everything, see everything, sense everything, every glance, every whisper, every shift in body language. That's what happens when your confidence fractures. Your senses get louder. Part 7. Meanwhile, Michael, completely unaware of the emotional impact, kept moving along his pre-planned path. He smiled for cameras. He answered a reporter's question. He greeted a director he admired. He adjusted his cufflinks. All normal, all harmless. But because Meghan was now hyper-aware, his distance felt intentional, even though it wasn't. When he didn't turn her way again, it felt like confirmation. When he didn't glance back, it felt like exclusion. When he didn't approach the area she had stepped toward, it felt like rejection. Not because he meant any of those things, but because once embarrassment begins, the mind fills in the gaps. Part 8. Let's talk about the crowd's perspective. No one saw the moment clearly. No one understood the timing. No one knew the gesture was meant for Michael's team. But they felt something shift. Human beings are emotional creatures. We feel energy before we understand it. So a few staffers exchanged glances. One raised an eyebrow. Another tilted their head. A third whispered, "Did something just happen?" Uncertainty breeds whispers. And whispers breed rumors. But this was only the beginning. Part 9. Because the moment Meghan stepped off the carpet, her publicist walked beside her with a nervous urgency. They didn't say much. Just small, vague reassurances like, "You looked great. It was a beautiful entrance. The photos will turn out fine." The kind of reassurances you give someone when you know something fell off, but you don't know how to fix it. They weren't lying. They were trying to protect her. But the tone gave it away. Meghan noticed. Of course she did. And that's when the first emotional crack appeared. Not visible, not dramatic, but real. Part 10. As Meghan entered the lobby area leading to the auditorium, she overheard two event volunteers talking. They weren't talking about her. They weren't being rude. They weren't even aware she was within earshot. One said, "Yeah, Michael's team is really strict tonight. No unplanned photos." A harmless statement. A standard piece of information. But because of what had just happened, those words slammed into Meghan's heart like a heavy door closing. Her steps slowed. Her eyes blinked in a way that meant she was trying to hold herself together. Her assistant discreetly handed her a water bottle, sensing something was wrong. And Meghan, trying to maintain composure, whispered, "It's fine. Let's keep going." But she didn't sound fine. Not at all. Part 11. This is where the night changed direction. Her discomfort didn't end on the carpet. It followed her inside. It clung to her like static. And soon, the whisper, the one that began on the carpet, found its way into the hallways. Someone said, "I think Michael refused her." Another added, "Did they have tension before?" Another, "I wonder if she approached at the wrong time." None of these statements were malicious. They were guesses, assumptions, speculations. But whispers multiply.